focus has been satiety, right? And what I'm going to go ahead and do, I'm just going to review what that is, satiety, satiation, prior to getting into the actual lessons. So satiety itself is basically when you're done with the meal, when you start to feel full, like you don't want to eat anymore, that's satiety. Satiation is basically like how long that feeling lasts. So basically, like if you're trying to lose body fat, for example, you want to feel fuller faster, and then you want that to last a long time between meals. Like you don't want to be thinking about food, between meals, and otherwise you're going to be tortured. You're sort of going to break down. And of course, hunger is real important to understand that hunger itself is a need to eat, right? So hunger is an actual need to eat. So that's kind of the overall sort of scheme of things and the overall definitions of things. Last time on Muscle PhD Academy, when we visited this subject, we talked about the mechanical aspects of satiety and satiation. Okay, we basically said that your stomach's got basically a volume counter, and so if you drink water with your meal, fluids with your meal, that will actually make you fuller, and things of that nature. It's kind of what we talked about overall. If you take a protein shake and you blend it instead of shaking in a bottle, you'll be fuller because more mechanical feeling. If you eat fiber with your meal, you'll be fuller because you're getting more of that mechanical stimulation. This week we're talking about something different. This week we talked about basically there are two pathways that you really have to be concerned about. One is the hunger pathways. Remember, hunger is your need to eat. Like you have a need to eat. So if I haven't eaten in a whole day, I have a need to eat, right? So we call it sort of the hunger, true need pathways. Then we have other pathways, which we call reward pathways. And that's what this whole week was about, okay? Some people call them hedonic pathways. We're going to make that simple and just say reward pathways. So we had 4 posts this week, or we've had 2, but we're going to have 4. So the first post that we're going to feed into this whole thing. Again, think of the reward center. The reward pathways are more centered around the palatability of the food. The and Andy will be able to tell you the palatability of food is dictated by essentially, obviously, how it tastes, the texture of the food overall. What are other things that affect palatability?
Mouthfeel,
smell.
Even
presentation,
colors.
All of those things, even how it's presented on the plate. All those things is the palatability of the food. Okay, so that's going to stimulate reward centers. How much you want the food, how much you like the food. That's palatability. It's separate from need. You have to understand it's separate from need. Okay, so now let's talk about this. You sit down to eat a meal. What's going to determine how much you eat of it? The first thing we talked about this week was variety. Okay, so variety is basically how many different dishes you actually have at a meal. So if I were to sit down, and the study we basically showed is that the more variety you have in a meal, the more you will eat. And I think that's very, very important, okay? So if I sit down at a meal, like one of the things that we're going to do, it's coming up soon actually, for Christmas is all of us, we're going to go to Brazilian Steakhouse, okay? So Brazilian Steakhouse.
We're going to Brazilian Steakhouse.
So yeah. You have Merry Christmas, guys. So we have a party all the time here. It's literally a party every day here. Literally, we had a party yesterday.
There's a lot of birthday parties.
A lot of birthday parties.
If you don't see it, follow Snapchat.
If you don't see it, follow Snapchat and Instagram. We're also going to have a party this Friday, so we got to figure that out. So anyway, going off that. So if you go to Brazilian Steakhouse, what's it have? A lot of variety. Okay, so if you have one meat, if I have chicken for dinner, and then I add steak to that, and then I add lobster to that, I will eat more because there's more variety. And why is the case? Dopamine is sort of a pleasure hormone. So if I say I haven't eaten something in a while and I eat it, you feel happy, right? You feel elated. That's dopamine that's being released. So if I eat steak, boom, I get a dopamine response, okay? Now, if all of a sudden, like, I've had that steak, I've had enough of it, I'm like, I don't want any more steak. And then Andy brings chicken parm, right? And I taste that. It's different. Boom, I get a dopamine response, okay? And then all of a sudden, I'm like, you know what? I'm good with that. I had the chicken parm. I had the steak. And then Andy brings out, like, I don't know, a souffle or something like that. Well, you know, something that sounds good, right?
Chocolate souffle.
Yeah, chocolate souffle. Boom, I'm going to get a dopamine response. Meaning I'm going to get a pleasure response every time I get a new food. But the thing to understand is, if I have a bite of filet mignon, okay, and then I have a second bite, by the time I get to the fifth bite, the dopamine response gets down-regulated. It goes down and down and down and down and down. It's almost similar to, like, if I turn on music, at first I get, whoa, a huge response. If it's the same song, I'll get bored of it. The dopamine response is specific to the food. So if I introduce a new food, I get a new dopamine response. I eat more. So the more variety I have, the better. Now, variety can be important to me for nutrients, but it's better to spread the variety out throughout the day and not in a single meal. Because if it's in a single meal, I'm going to eat more in that meal. So take-home message, if you're dieting, limit variety within a single meal, and you will spontaneously eat less, okay? The second post, and we posted this yesterday, was what's called transfer effect of food. So what it means is basically this, okay? If I eat a food that's similar to it in the same meal, I'll get less of a dopamine response, and I'll actually want that food less. So again, my favorite food is, well, probably bacon. But my second favorite food is probably steak, okay? And so if I have filet mignon again, right? But then Andy hands me a center cut sirloin. Don't get me wrong, like right now I want that really bad. But if I had the whole filet, my wanting of the center cut sirloin would be less, okay? But again, if he handed me more like the chicken parm, I would want that a lot more. The point is there's a transfer. Even if food's different, if it's similar, I won't want it as much. So we did an experiment where basically what we did was we took like a healthy peanut butter cup, there was a Quest Cravings peanut butter cup, and we basically had that to be consumed. We looked at what if we put a Reese's peanut butter cup in front of someone and said, how much do you want this? And then basically had them eat the clean peanut butter cup before that and said, now how much do you want this? And they wanted it less. So that shows that's the transfer effect. So you can technically, cheating clean is actually better. Like, in other words, if you're like, I'm only going to eat tilapia and what is it?
Steamed chicken.
Steamed chicken and tilapia.
Egg whites.
And egg whites.
Bodybuilder stuff.
That bodybuilder stuff. And now you are exposed to ice cream, you'll go nuts. You'll go crazy. You'll binge. And there's a lot of binging behavior that are in bodybuilders, right? So that's really important to sort of understand that as well. So now, going basically into that, my point is that you can, if you notice what do we do? We're always making healthy recipes. If you make a healthy low carb or healthy low fat recipe that's similar to the regular one, you'll be less likely to binge when exposed to the regular one. So the other day we had a birthday party for Cam in our lab, and I made a healthy peanut butter chip cup cheesecake. And a lot of the guys were like, if it was like, you know, if I were to have like this pie or this cheesecake, I'd choose this cheesecake. But the cheesecake was low calorie, you know, it was low carb, and it was just unfreaking believable. But my point is, being exposed to something that's bad for you, you'd be less likely to eat that if you were cheating clean. That's my point, okay? That was second post. The third one, which I think we're putting up today,
Yes.
today's palatability versus reward. So here's the concept, okay? Palatability, again, is it's how much you like the food, how much you want the food, how good the food tastes, the texture, the mouthfeel. It's not just the calories. It's not just the calories. It's all those other things. Calories are separate, okay? Need is, I gotta eat. I have to eat or I will die, okay? Or I'll stop functioning as well. So what ends up happening is that studies show that reward palatability can overcome your ability to determine need. So in other words, if I eat like a big meal and then you put a brownie in front of me, that will overcome the fact that I don't need it, right? So what we showed is basically that if you have a very highly palatable dessert compared to like a non-palatable dessert, you'll eat a lot more grams of that food. So if I gave you like berries with whipped cream, and then I weighed how much I ate, or if I gave you like a sundae with caramel on it, and Twix, and and cookies inside of it, gram-wise, I'm not just talking about calories, gram-wise, I will eat more of that food. So what that means is that if you're going to make or have a highly palatable food, you need to make sure it's clean, okay? Because you're going to eat more of that. It's just the way you will eat more grams of that. You can overcome that by basically making that cleaner and healthier, like all the recipes that we put on Muscle PhD. Or if you can't handle it, then don't have the palatable food available to you. But like we said earlier, if you don't expose yourself to palatable foods, when exposed to them, you'll binge. So you need to have some palatable foods. Tilapia and broccoli and green beans, you will binge later on. You don't want to do that unless you're a robot. And I mean, we're human, so we're going to make mistakes. The last post is really cool. And there was a paper in the study, actually, the title of the paper was called Mind Over Milkshake. Yeah, I was like, this is a cool paper. Like, it's good that scientists actually are getting a sense of humor, right? So, because I get ridiculed for that all the time.
Oh.
But yeah, whatever. So that's why we created our own institute. We do what we want to do.
The 99%.
We do what we want to do, right? Problem solved. Create your own institute. Do what you want to do. So anyway, moving on from that philosophical piece, the last thing we talked about was this mind over milkshake. What does that mean? They did a study, all right? So let's say that like I brought Paul in here, and I'm like, hey, Paul, taste this milkshake. It's super low calorie. It's like 150 calories. Let's say it really was 150 calories, okay? So I give Paul this shake, he drinks it. Now, I give him the same 150, 200 calorie shake. I say, Paul, damn it, I gave you the wrong shake. He drunk it, he's dieting, right? He drunk it. I said, Paul, I gave you the athlete weight gainer shake that we're giving the NFL athletes. Sorry, dude. It was 1,000 calories. That's it, right? Here's the thing. The hormones, the hunger hormones that Paul would, that make the hormones that make you hungry would be suppressed much more. This is what the study showed. If I told Paul you just had 1,000 calorie shake. Now, it was still a 150 calorie shake. Think about that for a second. The way you think about food determines your hunger in large part. And that's the message. That's the take-home message right now. The way you think about things determines your actual hunger response. How crazy is that? The hormones that get secreted are in large part determined by your mind. Okay? That's why the title of the article was Mind Over Milkshake. So what's the point? If you sit there and you're eating food and you're like, I'm deprived, this sucks, I'm gonna be hungry, this food's not enough for me, your body physiologically will respond that way. The first thing I learned in psychology from my mentor, Dr. Donald Sawyer, was the way you think about things drives the physical response, okay? Because the way you think about things drives an emotional response, the emotional response drives a physical response. If you're not feeling good or whatever, stop being a baby and suck it up and change the way your mind is. That's what you have to do, right? So, period. With food, you don't tell yourself, oh my God, I'm deprived, because you're going to release hormones and you have emotions that cause that to be the case. Yes, Deborah, it's awesome, mind over milkshake. So, and I love this. Tammy says molecules of emotion. Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. So, let me summarize this all up, guys, real quick. Number one is you have reward centers, and you also have need. Reward can overcome need. So if you're going to have highly palatable foods, you need to make them cleaner. You need to make calories don't determine palatability. You can make something that's healthy, and that's important, because otherwise you will eat a lot more. Variety also determines how much food you eat. So if you're dieting, limit your variety within a meal, right? That's why, I mean, I love buffets, don't get me wrong. But God, I'll eat 5,000 calories a buffet, and Ryan Lowry over back there in the office will eat like 15,000. So variety, limit variety within a meal. Less variety, spread it throughout the day. If you want variety for health, spread it throughout the day. But you don't want to have it within a single meal, because you'll eat way more, 50% more, 100% more. We talked about mind over milkshake. If you think you're deprived, your body will increase its hunger hormones. Change the way you think about things. I don't care how hard a situation is. Heck, this week was a stressful week. I changed the way I thought about things. I feel like I'm going to crush the world right now. I feel like nothing can stop me, right? It's the way I'm thinking about things. That's key, right? The last thing we talked about was cheating clean. If you're on a boiled chicken and tilapia and green bean diet, and you're exposed to a palatable food, you will binge. So cheat clean. You can have a healthy diet that tastes good. Okay, so basically you can make yourself homemade brownies that taste really good. Andy, all the time, makes stuff that's healthy that tastes way better to me than the real thing, right? So again, explore. Don't deprive yourself of a lot of things, and that's the key. So, all right, let's get into questions.
So there should be a lot.
Yeah, there should be a lot of questions. So try and keep them relative to like this topic. But someone says crealkaline versus creatine HCl. Don't do crealkaline. It's garbage. I just took a stance.
Okay, good.
Paul likes
no,
that.
I like when you take it.
Paul likes that. I mean,
Yeah,
I do.
Yeah, I mean,
Clear consensus
yeah.
answer, Doc's got
Yeah,
it.
creatine HCl works. So, boom. Love this.
So there should be
Absolutely love this.
Days a day for many years. It surprised me that thanks provide all essential nutrients you need.
Okay, I'll let them ask questions. Okay.
So this is actually pretty interesting. I'd like to see your insight on this one. Concerning overeating and satiety, a news story came out yesterday that the oldest person in the world, 117 years old, has been eating only 3 eggs a day for many years.
Great. Good. This is a great question.
It surprised me that the eggs provided all the essential nutrients she needed to survive for so long.
What are my thoughts?
What are your thoughts on this? Wow.
Okay, listen, guys. Look, most people don't know this about me, but one of my dissertation and my PhD, what got me the doctorate, was actually a dissertation on anti-aging, and I actually was looking at how can you keep people jacked their whole life.
Yes.
Hey, I think it's an important thing. I want my dad to live forever. I want him to stay jacked forever. So I said, I'm going to study this. It's dedicated to you, Dad. So the number one thing, and this is going to sound crazy to you, the number one fountain of youth out of all the studies ever, and I've read tons, hundreds, thousands, okay, of studies, is calorie restriction. Calorie restriction is the number one way that you could actually enhance longevity and lifespan. So that she's only eating 3 eggs a day. What happens is that when you calorie restrict, so think about it, it's scary, but there's that we may be programmed to die. And I hate to sound like morbid right now, but there's that's one of the theories. So think about like a switch. When say you have like 20 different proteins for skin. Obviously I'm underestimating this, but and as you age, maybe some of those proteins get turned off. The switch gets turned off. So now when you're older, you only have like 5. Okay, so your skin's leathery. It doesn't look as good. When you calorie restrict, it keeps the light switch on. Okay, it keeps the light switch on. Now the question is, why when you're calorie restricting, do you keep the light switch on? What's the switch? One of the things we think about is that it's actually ketones. When you restrict and you diet hard, ketones raise up in the blood. In fact, very high levels. And that keeps the switch on, okay? So that's why there's studies actually showing enhanced lifespan with ketogenic dieting, and there's studies showing enhanced lifespan with calorie restriction. So that's my hypothesis on why she was living longer.
That's a great question.
Yeah, gene methylation, same thing.
Does an obese person need to have 5 meals a day, or can they eat 3 meals a day? Can they eat 1 meal a day?
If an obese person, I think, should lower their meal frequency. So I think an obese person should lower their meal frequency like 2 to 3 meals a day, maybe even one meal a day, because what happens is, and actually Sam Bezak actually pointed me out to this. If you're on, what's up, Sam? When you have like clock genes. If I eat 6 meals a day, I actually have a clock that turns on that says you need to eat. If I eat less frequently, those clocks will be set to those times. Okay, so that's the point. So that's the point. So as far as gene methylation, yeah, calorie restriction will lower that, and that will make you live longer. So great point, Kyle. Okay, Tammy says, whenever I skip making hubby dinner, I say the hungry mouse lives longer. Absolutely, yes, good point. I'm not telling you guys to starve yourselves. I'm just telling you that, dieting actually might be super beneficial. Craig just joined. Craig, what's up, the superhero maker? Craig's freaking awesome. I love this guy.
Okay.
And, next question.
If your volume meter in your stomach says it's full, will your body still release the same dopamine response?
Oh, great question. So here's the thing to understand, is that basically you have an interaction between reward center and hunger. So if you are less hungry, you will want less food less. Even though it can overwhelm it, you'll blunt slightly that dopamine response. Okay, so it won't be as high. But again, if Andy made a dessert, and look, if I'm stuffed and you put in front of me like a brownie, chocolate, I'm still gonna eat it. I'll still get a dopamine response, but it's gonna be less pleasurable, right? Craig, I appreciate that. Thank you, man. This is a new sweater. I just got it.
Black Friday.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Black Friday. You gotta load up. These are expensive, right? You should fill the material. All right. What's next?
Are digestive enzymes such as proteases, papain, which is found, I think, in mangoes or pineapple, are they effective in drinking that? Is drinking whey without enzymes useless?
Well,
I would just focus on the last part of it.
Okay. So our digestive enzyme is beneficial. We actually did research with enzyme blend. We worked with Dr. Ralph Yeager on this and Dr. Martin Papura. And what basically, the more quality the protein is, actually, the less effective the enzyme is going to possibly. The more fast digesting, the less impact you'll get. But we actually found that even with whey protein, you got a higher spike in amino acids when you had digestive enzymes, if they're effective enzymes, right? Interestingly enough, what happens is enzymes will break down protein, in fact, if the problem with enzymes, like if you add them to a protein, sometimes they'll taste bitter. So you almost have to add at the end because they'll taste bitter because it starts breaking down the protein. If you've ever eaten like straight leucine, it tastes disgusting. So masking it's very hard. Now, one of the benefits of having enzymes is two things. One, if you have a smaller amount of protein, it'll digest faster and you'll still hit protein synthesis threshold. But the second benefit is that when you start pre-digesting protein into specific peptides, and Andy and I were discussing this earlier, peptides can actually stimulate a satiety hormone that's called GLP-1, glucagon-like peptide 1, and that actually has been shown to improve satiety. It will slow digestion of other foods, which will actually control insulin levels, and it actually makes you leaner. So I do think there's a role for digestive enzymes, and of course people who have intolerances may be able to overcome those intolerances by having that. So good question. Someone says, can you, go? That was a good question, I think. Oh, ketones in the mind. Deborah Jean White. Nice name. Ketones and the mind. For someone on this live broadcast, can you share the physiological conflict in the body if the mind is thinking I'm hungry all the time? So, but is this relative to ketones? Is that the question?
Yeah, it's relative to ketone. I think she's asking on a ketogenic diet. I think she's trying to relate why ketones are hunger.
Oh, understood.
Yeah.
So you're fat, Deborah. If I'm getting your question correctly, you're fasting. You actually have a need to eat, but you're not as hungry as you should be because ketones are much higher. Why? Okay. So, great question. In your mind, when we're hungry, your brain senses that like our main energy source is ATP. So your brain senses ATP is lower. When ketones rise up really high, they get in your brain, and ketones produce more ATP than anything, more than carbs, more than fat, more than anything. So what happens is that ketones are able to raise the ATP in your brain, and that says, I'm okay. I'm not as hungry as I thought I was, okay? And that's actually why the things like ketogenic dieting can help with satiety so much. So that's kind of the reason why, is because your brain's able to function off that, whereas at first, if you don't have ketones high, you're starving, you're hungry, oh my God, you're hypoglycemic. But people who fast, actually after a day, sometimes they're not very hungry, and that's why. So really good question.
Sugar addiction compared to drug addiction.
Well, again, a lot of the hedonic pathways that get stimulated with drugs are the same hedonic pathways that get stimulated with sugar. And so a lot of people will come out with studies and go, sugar's not bad, sugar's not bad when you control for calories. Give me something that has sugar in it that tastes really good and combine that with fat, and I'm going to overeat, okay? So because I get such a robust, rapid, high dopamine response. Does that make sense? So in other words, basically sugar, yes, stimulates reward centers. Why when you have drugs that stimulate reward centers, you stimulate the same thing. It's just obviously to a much higher extent, okay? So you're welcome. So what's so Caleb? Oh, go ahead.
Let's find her question.
Okay, we'll get back to you, Caleb.
Buffy.
Buffy says, I always like that was a cool name.
Yeah, it's a great
Like
name.
Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Yeah.
That was an awesome show, but I'm not gonna get it. Okay, I have lost interest in eating in general. The longer I eat ketogenic, is that good? I forget to eat, yet I'm getting. Okay. So Buffy, the thing to understand is there's a lot of other things. So your concept basically, is it good that I'm not eating? I think it's good that you have control over what you eat. I think that's a great thing. Because now the thing is, you have to determine, am I now deficient in something? So in that case, if you're not hungry all the time, then what you really need to do is basically sit down and write your diet out and make sure you're getting all the nutrients that you need relative to your goals. So I think it's a good thing, the fact that you're in control. That's what ketogenic dieting is. It puts you in control. Now, as far as getting pudgier, the thing to understand is like, there's more things in diet. Obviously, there's exercise that's involved. There's certain nutrients that are important for reaching your goals. So I think you have to analyze the whole picture. So again, look at your need. Are you moving? Like you said, maybe I'm assuming if you're looking at muscle PhD, you train. But a lot of times people train, but their movement throughout a day is low. So for example, like I have to voluntarily go out and get a lot of steps because I'm in the office all day and I'm in meetings all day. So I have to go out, and fortunately at ASPI we have like a beach outside. So Andy and I, Paul and I, will go out for a walk and discuss business, discuss the next thing on how to get you guys more jacked. So I would assess your overall steps, maybe get a pedometer. Your phone usually tracks your steps, and that should help. Okay, so let's move forward. Why don't you go down? Is that Caleb?
That was Caleb's response to Buffy.
Oh, okay, great. So let's go to the next question. Okay. So, why am I always hungry and more susceptible to cravings at night? Zero cravings in the morning / day.
That's a good point. It's a combination for a lot of people. I always overeat before bed or at night.
Kaylee, I'll be honest with you. Here's the thing to understand. there's a concept. Think about like your gas tank, okay? So like, in fact, I gotta fill up my gas tank. Right? Yeah, just remembering that, okay? The thing is, I gotta remember those things. My head's like, listen, I'm like way out there, okay? I'm thinking about really big things. But anyway, there's a concept. So why did I mention that? There's a concept called self-control strength. And self-control strength, or basically is kind of like a gas tank. So throughout the day, we use up this tank. And by the end of the day, it's almost depleted. Now, what I mean by there's studies on this. So, for example, say that there's someone I really don't like. When I talk to that person, it uses my self-control strength to not get pissed off, okay? So for example, say that I had to talk to this person for 30 minutes, and then someone put a really high-calorie brownie in front of me. I'm going to eat the brownie. Now, if I had, because it depleted my self-control strength. So now, on the other hand, let's say that I didn't talk to this person, okay? And you put the brownie in front of me and I was in a good mood and my self-control strength was high. I go, you know what? I'm cool. I'm not going to do that, okay? But vice versa. If you put that brownie in front of me and I had to look at it and then I talked to the guy that I didn't like, I might lose it with the guy because my self-control strength was depleted either way. Throughout a day, my self-control strength gets depleted, and by the time I hit nighttime, if I'm exposed to something highly palatable, my ability to resist it is less. So you've got to structure your environment at home to deal with that, okay? In which case, if you have variety or whatever, or highly palatable stuff, leave it at work. When you go home, you may just have to maybe you need to manipulate your environment. Everything you can do is try and work on not depleting your self-control strength while you're at work. So having more lower calorie, cheap, clean foods at work, by the time you get home, you won't feel like you've been deprived. And because what you're saying is like, I'm in strong control all day. You've used your self-control all day. When I get home at night, Tammy says like decision fatigue, brilliant, same thing. Okay? Does that answer the question?
Oh, yeah,
okay,
absolutely.
Awesome.
You can change your whole look on life, always stay positive.
Dude, that was brilliant, man. That was brilliant. Absolutely right. Change your out. The other thing is like reappraise things. If you're like, oh my God, my day sucks. I can't believe I have to overcome this. This term, I hate this term. I hate this term. I'm overwhelmed. Like, I hate that term. No. Like, change your perspective, and that will help not deplete your self-control.
Someone's always got it worse than you do.
Someone's always got it. I know there's people who have it worse than I do, so nothing to complain about.
All right, really good question. How much protein is too much protein? If your body doesn't need all the protein, does the transfer amino acids to glucose? Okay.
You get gluconeogenesis, basically.
Yes.
Great question, guys. So it's relative to your goal. The problem is when people say how much protein you need, they are talking about how much you need to gain muscle, right? That's always what people think. Oh my God, I only need 1 gram of protein per, or 1.6 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight, and if I eat any more, blah blah blah. That's based on one parameter, one variable, protein synthesis. Okay, there's a lot of other things in that. It all depends on your goal and the metabolic state you want to achieve. Okay, so if I'm not interested in getting in ketosis, but I want to lose a lot of fat and I want to be highly satiated, Dr. Joey Antonio's work showed that I could eat 300 grams of protein a day, and actually, it's like Andy's done, it's almost impossible to gain fat on protein. And he showed that people got leaner. Okay, so beyond, if I were to go from 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight to 1.5, I'd be far more satiated. I eat far less of everything else, and I lose fat. What's your goal? What are you trying to determine? On the other hand, I'm a keto guy. I travel all the time. I can't have high meal frequency. I got to be able to buffer stress, so I stay keto. If I have 2 grams of protein per pound of body weight, I'm not going to be in ketosis. Therefore, for me, 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight is my upper threshold. If you're not, that's not your goal and you're trying to lose fat or just trying to get cut and you're going low fat, 1.5, 2 grams of protein per pound. So my point is that what's your goal? Reverse engineer it. As far as just will gluconeogenesis happen? Yeah, but is that a bad thing? Because think about it from a satiety standpoint, according to the glucostatic theory, as soon as my blood glucose drops, that's a bad problem because I'm going to be hungry. If I'm making glucose from protein, great. I'm not going to be as hungry. So I think that's awesome. Matt Holst says, tip for bulking, hang around annoying people. Yes. That's a really good point. Guys, I'm going to take maybe one or two more questions here. So shoot whatever you can think about. Someone go, Daphne. There's a lot of nice names out there.
I have a good question.
Yeah.
The effects of high intensity training on satiety.
Great question. Real quick first off, high intensity training improves satiety. On Daphne's question, Daphne, can you do a video on diet psychology, extending on ideas like decision fatigue before? He's a brilliant.
Next month.
Great name, brilliant. Brilliant.
I like Daphne. Come back.
Daphne, come back. Definitely come back. Share it with your friends. Absolutely, we can definitely do that for sure. There's a lot of components to satiety relative to how you think about things, and we can absolutely do that. In fact, I'll talk to Andy. We'll think about like a Muscle PhD Academy week on something like that. Great point. Going to Andy's point, when you do low intensity cardio, sometimes it actually raises your hunger. But when you do high intensity, what happens? It just goes down, right? So like if I'm hungry, and in fact, like after this talk, I think I'm gonna knock out a few Wingates. Anyone gonna knock out some Wingates with me? Let's do it. So Andy and I are gonna go knock out some Wingates. Check out our Snapchat, you'll see it. But anyway, you're welcome, Daphne. But anyway, what happens is that one, you raise adrenaline, which releases fatty acids, which makes you less hungry, but also talk about the hormone. PYY, baby. Another topic we're going to talk about later. PYY improves satiety. So, yeah, that's... Someone says BCAAs and satiety. Matt, yeah, BCAAs are very good for satiety. Great question. In fact, it might be because it lowers something called AMPK in the brain.